Hello and welcome to our webinar. I'm glad to be here today with you and thank you all for joining to our first webinar this year for Azure and the SCOM managed instance. So this is a very exciting webinar for me today here. So because it's been on our work list for a really long time. And before I really kick off, I'm just waiting, like tons of people are just coming in. So we will kick off in a moment here for our journey. This will be just 1 hour, the journey, but we will give a bit of a retro perspective of what we at NiCE been working with Microsoft on over the last 3 years now with SCOM managed instance before Project Aquila. Let me get started. And so hello everybody, thanks for joining. My name is Christian Heidkamp from leading the product management at NiCE, and with me is Siegfried. Hi Siegfried.
Hello Christian.
Wonderful, thanks for joining. And we'll both steer you today through a set of really great content. As I said, I'm excited to present this to you. And there's a lot of technical stuff in there. So if it gets tricky or you are unclear about things, please use the Q&A area. So there's a question area. Feel free to try it out. There's also a chat, but best use the questions area so we can actually then address your questions right away or later in the Q&A part. So we have a short agenda here for today. We'll basically talk about the long way to success. And want to see how success looks today, and we'll do that. We'll give a lot of tips and tricks for you if you're on the journey as well, either watching this live or also watching the recording. So there are ways then in the recording to fast forward or repeat steps. So even if you don't grasp something today right away, feel free to go back to the recording. So we have an item about costs. So everybody think like, well, this isn't free on your service anymore, right? So you need to use Azure consumptions. You will use Azure for deploying that. So we'll talk about that. And then last point, also shortly like how the NiCE management parks work on the SCOM managed instance. Great, so let's get started. So we look a bit back and see where we came from. So previously, we were not really allowed to talk about that. We couldn't talk. This was NDA. So we started in 2020 with the first plans already together with Microsoft under NDA before it actually was called Project Aquila to see what's planned there are to have a SCOM within Azure. And it has taken a couple of turns. So 2 years back in 2021, we were part of the first private preview, and it was tough. So I guess Siegfried still remembers that very good. So we had to set up ADFS, install a lot of even hardware, right, Siegfried? We had to get even hardware for that, right?
Yes, at that time we had separate hardware for doing the VPN.
Exactly. So there was a lot of work involved, and well, it didn't lead to that success we have today. Then we had another private preview in 2022, which was May last year, and then in November we had the public preview. So we constantly gave feedback to Microsoft. So some of them has found its way into the current preview, some of it not. So, but yeah, we're still in contact with the program management at Microsoft. So, and I'm also happy to welcome them here today, and also then for the other colleagues later in the recording. So, wonderful. So first, let's do a step back and talk a bit what's actually the SCOM managed instance. So what is it actually? And I put the credits from Microsoft here, so because that's basically also what is in there. So it's a fully managed instance of Microsoft System Center Operations Manager, which is managed by Microsoft to some extent. So and it runs basically anywhere on Azure, so in a resource group, so you can use your subscriptions. So it has a link to the on-prem environment. So we talk on this in about a moment, and it is actually compatible with your on-prem SCOM infrastructure. So you can actually bridge it. If you have existing gateways, you can connect them. So and in the end, I think the fourth point on this list is really key. Everything you have done in the SCOM management packs, you override, you can take them one-to-one over from an on-prem to a SCOM managed instance. So it's very, very transparent and easy. Basically, similar to if you migrating from management group instance staging area to a production management group. And then you can leverage everything you have in Azure. So log analytics, you can use Power BI to feed the data in there, reporting, etc. So that's basically the full bunch of options and features you have here. So just to shortly iterate on this again, so the integration into third-party tools is available. So you can use third-party management packs like those from NiCE. You can use Squared Up or other dashboard solutions on top of it. In the performances there, which is amazingly good and expensive, using the SQL managed instance on Azure. So we'll go through that, and in the end reduce your footprint from what you have in on a premise environment. Your dedicated infrastructure goes smaller, and you can basically have the things on the Azure. So in the end, the value proposition, again, this is credits to Microsoft, is really here is like to remove some of the burden of SCOM admins from maintaining the infrastructure. So obviously admin tasks are still left to the large extent there. So but the actual system, the servers infrastructures are running on the Azure environment. And well, you have the Azure portal. Well, we start with the demo in a moment. We enter the Azure portal and take it then basically from there. And yeah, you have all the constructs like security, the managed user accounts, the managed identities, the key vaults, everything that comes to use in the SCOM managed instance, and we walk through that. The last point, I haven't really seen, there are bugs, but they are, well, we're in private preview, right? So in public preview, so they will eventually get resolved, I hope. Great. So where to start? So well, if you up to the journey, you have an Azure subscriptions. Obviously, that's a prerequisite to have a subscription with a good number of a credit card basically connected to it. So and because the simple MSDN subscription will not last you for very long. So if you want to do this in a day or two, you might work through that. But if you want to use it for a longer time, then you need to have a credit card connected to that, and charges will incur. So we will talk about this later, then what cost is associated to that. But besides that, there is some basic understanding, or in some areas detailed understanding required of items like the group managed service account. So the group managed service accounts were introduced in SCOM 2019 already. So and then 2022 has them as well. So, and there's a good blog here by the monitoring guys, basically writing about how to set this up. It's really lengthy. It has all the details in there. But it is a good practice actually to go through that, because before you actually start the journey on the SCOM managed instance, because all the concepts will, or many of the concepts will you encounter on the SCOM managed instance as well. The next thing is about, you need to be very precisely and exact. If you don't be exact and really follow the steps, it's yeah, but you're going to fail. I cannot promise this. So we failed a number of times, and yeah, this is really important. So, and we will go together now through the prerequisites, and then later go through the steps of creating a SCOM managed instance, and then look at the managed instance basically. And there are a couple of other technologies that are required, like site-to-site VPN, express route in case you're using that, the Azure AD, the AD, DNS, service principals, in on-prem AD, group managed service account, Azure network. I could probably continue this a bit. So these are basically Windows, Azure, and AD points, as well as networking. So if that's not clear, you will have a hard time eventually, but we'll try to help you get a bit through. And if you have questions, then again, feel free to type them in. With that, actually, I want to hand over to Siegfried to get us an overview of the big picture here with regards to networks and how everything is connected, before we actually go to the next step and talk about the prerequisites. So Siegfried, please give us a quick overview of the Azure line of sight and the topology.
Okay, sure. On the left side, we see our on-prem environment. We decided to use one of our existing test environments here. It's a virtualized environment. It has an AD, DNS, There's a couple of Windows systems which are part of the domain and a Linux system which is part of the domain. And we decided then not to go the express route way, but a simple site-to-site VPN. So for that, we deployed VPN gateway in Azure here in a separate subnet in the SCOM MI VNet, which we created. And on the other side, in our on-prem environment, we implemented or we installed a router firewall, that's pfSense here, configured the site-to-site VPN to the Azure VPN gateway. That was really quick and could be done in a couple of, not minutes, but under an hour. And for the test here, it works like a charm. So every system which is here in our Lab 80 on-prem environment can see and can talk to every system which is on the SCOM MI VNet here and vice versa. And that's the line of sight here. So we have connection from our AD to the SCOM MI or to any test system here, for example, a test system, just to verify the connections and the configurations, and vice versa. And for the, in addition, we deployed a NAT gateway here and assigned it to the subnet for the SCOM managed instance, so that the managed instance, the SCOM server, is able to go outside and connect to foreign or remote services. We'll talk about that a bit later, I think. And that's it. So the DNS server for all the systems is our AD here. That's located, the DNS is located on the ID. We created here reverse lookup entries for the systems which are in Azure. And yeah, that's the relatively straightforward way to configure that. And both nets are now connected via this site-to-site VPN.
So I think we had one comment from my side, and the question to you is basically these subnets, because initially we didn't have subnets but various networks, and because I think you can connect different networks as well. But I think we decided for subnets and not to use, I think, network pairing, right?
No, we have subnets here. So I think the SQL managed instance needs an own subnet here, and just we decided to put then the SCOM MI in an own subnet. And we had a couple of other subnets here just to put some test systems in there, but these are not shown here. And what we did is to deploy the VPN gateway in a specific subnet. And the gateway subnet here is created automatically when you do this. So that's an internal one. So basically we have these two subnets, SQL for SQLMI and SCOMMI, and one for our VPN gateway then. And yeah, that's it. Okay. Not that's not too complicated then.
Okay, good. So then let's continue. So and well, when you go to the Azure SCOM MI webpage where the prerequisites are listed, there are a couple of them, and I listed them basically here as well, so that you can kind of follow along what we did. So there's one part which happens the on-prem environment. So the left side you have just seen, like everything what is there. So first, obviously, we will configure an account in Active Directory, which is then basically our principal account we're going to use. Then the computer security group. We configure a DNS and a load balancer, and then create a group managed service account, basically. I quickly jump to our domain controller now to show you a bit around. So you see we have different systems. So this is basically our domain controller, our AD. And the first thing is a specific user here, which we have created. So this is the SCOM MI user here. And I'll get later a bit to that, like what kind of privileges those are required. So this might get a bit complicated, because in the end, this account is used by the automatically created SCOM server to join this to the domain. To join this domain, we have a security group created, and basically you need to verify that the security group here is managed by this account basically you have created. So this is basically the key. Next, you basically create a group managed service account here, and this is done by the PowerShell. And we also get to a bit this later. You see additional features like tabs on here. Whenever you work in here, I can give you the recommendation already to put the advanced features on because you're going to need them later. So this is this part for on-prem. So if I go back, so basically these are the steps. Oh, the load balancer. For the load balancer, we create like an entry here. Again, we're using this load balancer, SCOM MI LB for load balancer 05. And if you might wonder, like, why 05? This is the 5th try attempt basically setting things up, and I keep counting this up, and you see some older systems will come to that later, like what happens if a deployment fails in a case. So important is to put this in and as well configure the reverse lookup zones as well, because you want to really make sure that your DNS is working well, because latest when you're onboarding Linux or Windows systems to SCOM MI, you might run into problems with the certificate signing. Okay, good. Then let's go to the second part. So the Azure AD preparation. So if we look at the Azure AD preparations, you need for your resource group register the resource provider, which this is clearly separated, and I don't think anything can go wrong there. Then you basically create a managed identity. Even that part is pretty clear. So, and then the next part is really create your SQL managed instance. So, and I will quickly go back to the system here and now go to the Azure part. This is over here. So we'll go to the SQL managed instances, and let's see if we get direct to subscription. So right here. So that is the created one. You can create another one, but as it mentions, it requires quite some time to complete the creation. So 6 hours typically it takes. Here in this environment, you see that the database and the data warehouse are here when they were created. So, and yeah, this is when you set up, this is the step which takes the longest basically. When it comes to cost, I also mention this quickly because the SQL managed instance is the most expensive part, which you will run if you're not using multiple servers in the scale set later. So you want to eventually make sure that you downsize the size, because the size you're starting with is an expensive one. So we size this down to 32 gig and to a lower tier basically. This can be done easily, so we didn't experience any problems here. So obviously we are not having a large number of agents currently connected, but if you want to save some credits, then this is advisable. We'll get to back this for security configuration in a moment. So once this is done, you do the role assignment, and this is if you back here to SQL managed instance. This is actually where you have challenges. If you go into this area here where you see Active Directory admin, and if you click quickly back and forth, you see here it quickly checks if the Azure AD has access to that. So here again, and it does have, but you need to configure this before. And it happened twice to me that I actually did this configuration incorrectly, because I did it, but then it says everything okay, but at the save button basically, you need to go extra step and click the save button here. Otherwise, it's it is not functional later. You can start the SCOM MI deployment, but at the later part when it starts to deploy the database, it will fail. So again, make sure that you really follow the instructions there. Okay, then latest we do the create the key vault, policies, and secrets. So that's basically the preparation you need to do. Oh, maybe one thing to the secrets, which is also a common area where you might run into problems. If you go to the key vaults, you create basically your key vault, and in the key vault, then you first need to set an access policy. The access policy you set to the managed identity. So, and you need to basically make sure that the managed identity has get and list to this. And when you do the secrets are basically, well, you get the secret name and the actual secret. So and this is, I think, easily confused. So there is a secret and a secret value. To not confuse it, I put your German names there, so you can even learn some German here in the session today. Benutzername says is the username, and Passwort with a T at the end is the password. But actually, these are the parameters basically that are used then later when we deploy the SCOM managed instance, and the actual secrets are stored in here. So also here the password is basically here in the secret value. But that's basically it. If you follow this precisely, then you're ready to create a SCOM managed instance, and that's what we're going to do now together. All right, so let's get back to the same system. So basically go to to the SCOM managed instances here. So you can go create instance. When you pick your subscriptions, so we created already a resource group, just better for organizations. So we have a SCOM MI resource group. Take in mind that there will be additional resource groups created by the deployment. So everything that starts with an MC underscore is a resource group that is created by the SCOM deployment. So we give this a name, SCOM MI, well, 06 would be the next one. So make sure you pick a region that is supported. Then we get 80, which is our domain controller. And now I quickly need to check this here. So go back here. So okay, we don't have a OU path. We can pick the key vault, and now basically, if you remember right, the first German words you learned today in your session is Benutzername. So, and it's just not to confuse it. It says username secret and gives a hint that to use that, and the password is the password, which are basically the placeholders. If you want to save money, you can use your hybrid benefits here, which we do, and we're all set. I can just go next.
One moment, Christian.
Yes.
If you want to deploy this, really deploy this, then change the LAN to LAP in the first
yeah. Okay.
page.
Oh, that's good. I'm good. There's another error which is on the DNS actually. So, but just to make it right. But I want to actually show you, even if I put something wrong in here, some things get caught by a verification, some don't get caught by a verification. So I actually put now the wrong DNS server in here. This is incorrect. So, but we'll just check later in a moment, like if it catches that or not. So because there is a verification script that runs, but it has disappointed me many times. So so I'll just use a wrong DNS server IP just to see if he verifies the DNS server, which would be easy to do. So I would expect that, but and complains about that. So now we put the SCOM managed instance subnet in here, but then the load balancer is the I just need to copy that over. I'm just lazy here. And I'll also put the IP address. The load balancers I created, that was the one we saw earlier. Then the group name, I'll also copy that here, is the one we earlier saw in the slides, and we didn't run through that, creating that in the AD. And last but not least, the group managed service account, which is that one, finishing with a $important. So next, we go through the resource, which has our SQL managed instance, which we created already beforehand. And now we basically pick the managed identity. The other ones which are listed are, you see there, we're starting again with MC of the resource group. They're created by the other deployments I did. Next, so well, don't use any tags. So next, so it runs basically a final validation, and actually it passes, although it has a wrong DNS server. So this shows you already that if I would deploy now, it would quickly run into the problem that it can't even connect the domain controller here correctly. So this is a basic validation, really very, very basic validation. It will not verify many things. So, so I will not hit create now. So, but review basically the managed instance that are running here right now in a moment. So with that, I'm going back to the slides here. And talk about what all can go wrong. So the first thing I quickly mentioned already, so and you have a screenshot here, if you deployed the SQL managed instance, the Active Directory admin, just really make sure that first you need to allow access to the SCOM managed instance from AD, and after that you need to set the admin. And we set the admin here to the managed identity, which has been created before, and then we can yeah, basically save that and click save and go back really and to check if that's there. Next one, this is a tricky one. I don't think anybody came across yet. It's funny, it's just based off my habit. Whenever I create a load balancer, I use 100 in the end. So I also went here and created like 100. Funny enough, it looks like that any IP address ending on 100 is reserved. So you can use basically all IP addresses, then just don't use 100 because it will fail and say 100 is already allocated. I didn't find any resource because there's nothing running in that resource group. It's not even deployed, but it will start the deployment. It goes actually quite far until it spins up the management servers, and then it will hit actually a problem after about 30 minutes and tells you, well, you can't use that. And I was like really scratching my head. And it's like, what's going on? And as soon as I changed it away from 100, it started working. So don't use this. It's actually nowhere documented. So I'll pass this also as other things to Microsoft to improve documentation. Domain join fail. The actual account that is used for the domain join is the very first user account you create. So, let me go quickly back to the AD environment. So here we created the user, the SCOM MI, this one here. And yeah, well, if you don't give the correct permissions to this user, the domain will fail. So I was lazy and made it part of administrators. If you don't want to do that, then yeah, you can give a limited set of permissions. You need to be aware that it will not only do the domain join, it will also set SPNs, and that even failed now. Well, even if this deployment, the SPNs will not be set. So I will talk to this in a moment. So, but be aware that you need to have the correct permissions, otherwise this will fail. And the key thing is the error which is given is completely misleading. Username and password incorrect. So I opened the case with Microsoft and told them this is the error, but they couldn't lead me to the point that from that user actually it's a missing privilege, and the passwords and well, and a username is perfectly fine. Next, key vault permissions. Really make sure you give the secret permission and not the key permissions. So that's also easily overlooked because they're right next to each other. So just make sure you give the secret permission and not key permission. So yeah, this again, following very precisely the different steps that are outlined. Also, again, this is not checked. So all of this, what I'm showing is when you start the creation, it will create a managed instance. It will first create a scale set. It will create EVMs, and it goes as far as modifying objects in your Active Directory. But then at one point it will hit and it will not revert. This is the point. It will not revert. So it will leave a lot of orphaned stuff in your resource groups, which are fine, which are isolated, but even worse, well, I call it worse, it leaves changed or modified objects in your AD. So because of that, you want to be extra careful if something fails. You have, for example, a managed instance that fell. So I'll show you this, how this actually shows, because I left actually some SCOM managed instance that failed in here. So if I go to all the managed instance, you see we have actually 5 managed instances, different names, and well, they're here on file, and then as you access them, some of them might work or don't work. So, but yeah, they are actually not cleaned up. So it says status failed, but things are not cleaned up. So if you go to the resource group, which was created by those, so I go to the resource group. So one deployment is this one here. So this one failed, and it actually leaves stuff here. So a managed identity is not the big problem, but other things are a problem. So it actually leaves the scale set with VMs which are running. This means even if you have a failed SCOM MI deployment, there's eventually high cost occurring and running because there are VMs running basically in that scale set. So you really want to make sure you clean up after that. There are managed identities left, changes in the resource group. Eventually, databases are created in the SQL managed instance. Also, there is the resource group left, and there is stuff changed in the AD. So this is key to know because that is rather more important to clean up. So if you go back to our AD here, and for example, we had this managed instance here which failed at a quite late state. So the Windows, the server created on Azure in the scale set already got added to the domain. So it is on here. Plus it also changed here in the group managed service account, this one, we use that one at that point, it actually modifies the SPNs. So you want to make sure to clean that up before you try another deployment here. So that is key. So or use a different name and clean everything up. But it's I just want to mention that there is some leftovers on an unclean finish. So that basically needs to be manually cleaned up. All right. If it works finally, we're here. The deployment is complete. So and here we actually see now everything got created. We have 40 minutes it took to deploy that, and with that, I think we can yeah, there are some post deployment steps which are key. So basically you need to set the SPNs. It never worked in my case that are correctly set. Yeah, I typically use the group managed service account to set them. I quickly show this to you again here in the group managed service account. Go to the properties. You will see the attribute editor only if you haven't been in the advanced settings, and go to basically the SPNs here and make sure that the SPNs for both the health service and the SDK service are set for the system. The other ones will be set automatically. Those ones will be set automatically. But in my case, the first one, two were basically not automatically added. What will happen if they're not there? You will then be later have problems to onboard any servers or add any agents to this environment. All right, but if that's done, we can actually go and open now finally our SCOM managed instance, which we do now. So we go to SCOM managed instance. So the one which is working is the latest one, the 05. So we see actually is provisioned. We have a load balancer, we have a front-end API, IP address, so we can connect either with the web console or the ops console. The connection basically works by, in my case, I basically use the existing console which was installed on my system, go to connect, and then basically take the load balancer from here, copy it to the clipboard, and go over here, paste it in here and connect. So it basically now connects to the SCOM managed instance. Just wait until the stuff loads up. Okay, you will wonder, it's like there's no difference to SCOM 2022. So it's basically very much the same. So it's basically from a console perspective, it's difficult to find a difference here. So so there's not much I'm going to show because I think, yeah, basically all of you who are on the call are familiar with SCOM. So I don't need to drive you through this here. So also from the administration area there, you can basically use all the different features and functionalities that you know from well, on-prem System Center Operations Manager deployment. So what is, however, different is like the Azure part. So I will go back here, and obviously you have all the information here on the SQL managed instance, and this is deployed to a resource group. So, and I will actually go to those resource groups now, which was created. So going back to the resource groups. So here we have the MC SCOM MI resource group SCOM MI 05. And here are the key parts which are important. So you might wonder, how do where is actually SCOM running now, right? Where is it actually now? It's like, yeah, it must be a Windows Server. Yeah, true, it must be a Windows Server. So where is the Windows Server? The Windows Server or those servers are placed in a virtual machine scale set. So we go to the virtual machine scale set, and here we can look at the instances. So we have one instance, so we basically are running just one management server. So this is the MS for management server here. We can use scaling and add, like, for example, additional management servers now, and move this up to a number, and then basically scale it across. So due to the number of costs, I didn't do that. So questions like, can we connect to it? Yes, we can connect to that. So we can basically go here and go to the actual VM, connect with an RDP set. We can download the RDP file. And just open this RDP file, connecting to it. So as this is part of our on-prem AD, we can just use our standard users that are set up to connect to that. We'll logging in so here to this, and we are basically on the system. You see the event log is open, stuff you typically look at. So, and here we have the standard services, you know, the configuration service, SDK service are running here. You can look at the registry. We have registry settings, like, and if you look at the database name, for example, we see here the connection to the SQL managed instance with the database and the data warehouse. So that's basically all the information, and it's very similar to, or it's basically the same as Windows System Center Operations Manager 2022 deployment. So also it handles the same way. So so there's nothing more specific to show. Obviously, if you get into questions like, yes, how do I patch the system and so on, so that's possible. You can either work through the scale set, or if you go to the SCOM managed instance, we also have the patching in the configuration, so we can do patch through here. So let's say update or patch the instance. Currently there are no patches pending, so but I could do this through this window here. Yeah, onboarding agents. So that's an interesting one. So we started first to onboard a Windows Server basically now here to this one. So if I go back to the SCOM managed instance and go up here, so I'm connected. So I have a Windows Server which has been added here. So this one here, so we see the management server, but plus we see an additional server. And this one is basically on-prem part. So you can use, obviously you can manage on-prem systems or also Azure system. It doesn't matter where they reside. They can also reside outside on a gateway system. So this is up to you. So I will quickly pull up the slide again with the architecture. Let's go back here. Sorry for driving through the slides, just a moment. There we go. So you see BW87. So this is the Windows system. So what about Linux? If you go to the Microsoft SCOM MI documentation, you're not going to find anything. But we just checked and say, well, let's give it a try. Added as we have in our lab Linux systems, we checked. There's a specific view here, which is called Unix Linux supported agents, which basically lists them, which are currently in here. So I have supported the / management packs are in here, so you can actually onboard those. Well, there are others coming in, at least seems like right now. So just got to refresh here. Okay, so we have Red Hat 7 as well. So they basically are just as any other Linux systems can be onboarded. Again, make sure your DNS is correctly configured. So reverse lookup must work in order to have the correct certificates named and signed for Linux. So also here, if I go now to the Linux systems, we see a Linux system here. and it just has the what you typically expect from a Linux system. You can go in here and it's fully managed and monitored, so you have all the things available. So you can go in here for the additional monitor, so we can go in here and look at the various items, file mounts, and so on, also for a Linux system. Again, it doesn't matter if the Linux system is an Azure resource group or is it on-prem, you can basically mix and match as you like. So that is really neat. Okay, so and obviously that handles all through this here. So all right, so with the next steps, I actually want to get a bit more to what we do from NiCE, from the management pack side of things. So it's like now we have set up basically the Azure SCOM managed instance, and let me just forward to that. Got to know deployment is complete. We have done this, and yeah, well, before we get to the cost part, which we just keep for a moment in the back, so I just want to show you when it comes to the NiCE management packs which we have added. So we have, let's start with Active 365, and I'll just spend a short moment on them. They are like full recorded demos for that available. Otherwise, you can happy to also talk to us about that. We can give you a detailed demo. So we have the tenants for monitoring added here. So we have Exchange Online monitoring, OneDrive monitoring, SharePoint monitoring, Teams monitoring. So we do in Teams, it's very advanced. So we really do monitor Teams average jitter for your tenant. So based on the call record. So this is like not just for single basically a user, but it's like Microsoft Management Pack does do it, but it's across like all your calls being placed in your tenant. There's probing for chat, so to get the end-to-end monitoring for that, package loss and round trip operations, total number of calls per day. So well, it's just running not since 2 days, so we can't see the line yet. So but this basically gives you like the total number of calls for your tenants. In SharePoint Online, we have a lot of different options as well. We do like active probing for upload and download. Also for the Exchange part, we do have like logon and other things. We do monitor service principals. So these are the Azure AD service principals, basically your applications. We do monitor them, for example, for the expiration of secrets. So if you add secrets to that, you get an alert if secrets expire for your service principals in Azure AD. Again, I'm not going to go through this. We have the NiCE VMware management pack, and we tried like to put some, well, so put some load on the SCOM managed instance. If you want to put load on the SCOM managed instance, just add a lot of objects. So actually, we used our monitoring environment for VMware to load like a lot of SCOM management packs on that, a lot of virtual centers and hosts and virtual machines onto this. So, this was the reason Siegfried said earlier why he opened basically this to the outside network via gateway. So we can actually connect back into another environment which has a lot of virtual machines. So here we, if you open now the virtual machine state view, I bet there are a few on there which have more than 4,000 VMs running in their environment. So we do monitor over like exactly 4,000 VMs right now here, and including snapshots, network adapters, storage, and so on, plus a good number of virtual machine hosts. Yeah. And we have seen that it actually does create some performance impact on the virtual machines that's running the SCOM managed instance, but with respect to IOPS, that's pretty good actually. So yeah, we see actually one of the hosts is violating a threshold, but the monitoring is completely there, so we can actually go here, open performance graph and other things. So do clusters and everything what we do in the VMware management pack from NiCE. Last but not least, we have the same for Oracle, and let's put, for example, Oracle on Linux here. So here we do actual discover the Oracle system. We have and do the key Oracle monitoring, basically also agent-based. well, you can do it remotely as well as you wish, but we do get an understanding of how our Oracle environment behaves here. We actually see there's archive mode and some logs detected. So that basically gives an overview of the Oracle environment. So, but it fully integrates with the SCOM managed instance part as well. So that's a short overview how NiCE management pack work in the SCOM managed instance. The same applies for other management packs from NiCE, like DB2 or some of the Linux-based management packs, or the free log file management pack you can use. They're fully integrated also with the SCOM managed instance. So I've did a lot of talking now. Now, obviously, the question is like, how much does it cost? Well, in this case, you pay Microsoft, right? So you pay Microsoft quite something. So maybe Siegfried, you take a quick step in here and give us an overview of the cost, please.
Yes, these are the costs or the major resources here which are involved, and the costs for 1 day. So around 20 euros in our environment here. But these are the resources which were scaled down by us prior to our test. So after creating all the resources here, we scaled down SQLMI and SCOM VMs in the scale set. And for that, we are paying now 20 euros a day, and you can do the calculation. So around 600, quite a number for the test.
Yes,
and you can see the SQLMI is by far the heaviest point, so the more costly point here. So it takes 6 hours to deploy, so why not?
Well, and you pay for that for the 6 hours. You don't get anything to use,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, maybe I also quickly show you. So if you go back here to the let me go back to the SQL managed instance, so and see how this is scaled down right now. So so here the compute and storage area. So we actually use the standard series, but put this down. You can pull this up like here, let's say, and you see actually the price increase immediately. And also if the storage goes up, you end up like with a much higher monthly cost. So just be careful. So the default deployment which is in there is somewhere around this size, I think. So when you basically start from the default deployment. So the first thing after it got created, we basically go in here and put everything to minimum and leave it here, and that ends up with those costs basically. So as we're using a developer subscription here, we do already have the hybrid benefits. If you otherwise need to get them in there, I'm not sure how much it would be if you don't use them, but well, it says 55% it goes down, but even then it would also go up, obviously, if you don't use those benefits. The other adjustment we did is actually for the scale set. So let me jump to that. And I actually do that right now. I say, well, this is now too expensive. So and we're going to rescale this now. So going to the instance here. So, and I think we got it. No, we just got, oh, where's that? No, it's actually the scale set, I think. Size, here it is. So currently we're on a DS3, but I typically, last time we split it by half, so we just go to a DS2 and I'll just hit resize. Now this is like while SCOM is running on the system, it will basically resize the whole thing. From a DS3 tier to a DS2, we're going to save about 80 euros a month by this change. So and it will monitor over the next days how this is actually behaving and if there's a changes needed. So if you go to this one here, actually we see over the time we only have spikes, frequent spikes over the hour. That's when of the main collector for VMware actually kicks in, but otherwise then it's not that much. So like everything got dropped down now, the machine is resizing and then comes back up. So we're not going to go back to the demo now. So, but this is something you can do. We did this before, so it works as well. So don't be shy. Just like take that if you're in a POC environment. If you're looking like for more production environment, obviously you might want to be careful with scaling and correct calculation. Great. With that, we're coming towards the end of our item. So I do a quick summary here today. So first, pre-checks are limited. So whenever you start and put all the data in, and then there's a green checkbox, and you click create on this SCOM Managed instance, you might, well, it's good probably you fail in the first attempt. Otherwise, really make sure everything is working well. So these pre-checks could much be improved by Microsoft, I think, or I hope they do this. The consequence is that it will not roll back or clean up. So it does kind of roll back, but I'm not sure what it does, but it basically, yeah, it will basically stop, and there's a lot of things to clean up. So you want to understand what actually happens, that you can clean up yourself later. Next is the, well, you always require Azure credits, and yeah, last but not least, yeah, we'll did this like over close to 3 years now. So if you get stuck somewhere, so even I had to call a colleague or somebody in the community to have a look at things, because I completely overlooked that in one area I did put the permissions to the key and not to the secret, which is kind of next to each other, and the error messages are not always very good, or in most cases are not good. So yeah, so you will have a problem with that. So yeah, I think with that we're done, and I thank you very much for joining. So I just checking if there's some questions. So if there are questions, please put them in. One question is on Linux, because I think many did not try this. The question is, what were your challenges with deploying a Linux server? One challenge was there that the DNS wasn't correctly configured, and the actual Linux system didn't have a correct host name on that. So that caused a number of problems, and there was a firewall that came back on. So there were some things on the Linux side, but in the end, we didn't face any other problems with Linux. So it might be also that we are doing Linux a lot. So we like, well, we was really working well. So yeah. Okay, good comments here. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the feedback, which I'm getting here right now. So I see if there are other questions coming up, feel free to reach out to us. So yeah, happy to jump on a call or talk about this. So with that, I think we're done. There's one more question. Yes. What are your thoughts on using SCOM MI, which is still in preview in production environment, ideal to run side by side with on-premise SCOM? Yeah. Well, for production environment at this point, to be honest, I would not recommend this. So it's basically good to have it at on, because it's in public preview. So you can multi-home your agents. So multi-homing is basically if you're using an agent and connecting to your on-prem and your SCOM MI environment. So that will work. So this way you can basically do it on both sides. Not all MP do support that, but most of them do actually, and that would be a good way. So you can side by side look at that. What I think the challenge is a bit like how you work with the scale set. So we didn't do like tests for failover, like there are like times when you patch your SCOM managed instance, so we didn't go through that. So in the end, I think exactly as it's suggested, use it side by side with a SCOM on-prem environment. So, but we didn't hit really bugs after deploying. However, we didn't run for a longer time yet, because due to the cost, we keep it running for like a week or two and then shut it down. And if we need, we pull up another one. So yeah. All right, so I think that's it with questions. Yeah, the recording will be shared, and yeah, okay. Thank you for the questions. So we'll share the recording afterwards. Perfect. So with that, I'm closing for today. I thank you very much, and Siegfried, thank you, and have a good day. Thank you.